The opposition in Venezuela obviously understands how they're going to get into power, which is have the United States do it for them. That's why here's Politico October 10th, right when the Nobel Prize was given to the opposition leader. The first thing she did was dedicated it to Donald Trump in order to thank him for his, quote, decisive support. I mean, I guess you can believe it's a coincidence that the Nobel Peace Prize was given right to the opposition leader of Venezuela, the person we want to install as president of Venezuela at the exact moment that we're ready to do so. And yes, you can make the argument. I haven't studied enough to know, but I'm sure there's a good argument for it. I don't know for sure. I'm willing to assume it's true that the election in Venezuela was the byproduct of fraud, that Maduro didn't really win, that the opposition won. But what is that the business of the United States? We can go all over I can show you half the world where there aren't free and fair elections held, where there are elections held and they're manipulated, they're distorted, the opposition is banned from running. I can show you Ukraine or Egypt or Saudi Arabia, all over the world. Are we the enforcer now of free and fair elections? Is that really what anyone thinks the United States is interested in? Obviously, long before there was that election in Venezuela, we were trying to install the chosen leader of that country. You may recall that both Republicans and Democrats united to affirm this utterly preposterous delusion that someone named Juan Guaido was actually the president of Venezuela, and we treated him as the president of Venezuela, not the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party, just all of Washington. And half of Europe decided that the real president of Venezuela, even though no one ever voted for him in Venezuela for that, even though he didn't actually run anything, was someone named Juan Guaido. Here in the first Trump administration, 2020, February 20th, 2020, Trump gave his State of the Union speech to a joint House of Congress. There you see Mike Pence, his then Vice President, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, sitting behind him, where he welcomed the legitimate and sole sovereign and president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido, and watch how both parties responded.
The United States is leading a 59-nation diplomatic coalition against the socialist dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Maduro is an illegitimate ruler, a tyrant who brutalizes his people, but Maduro's grip on tyranny will be smashed and broken. Here this evening is a very brave man who carries with him the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of all Venezuelans. Joining us in the gallery is the true and legitimate president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido. Mr. President, please take this message back to you.
And there you see every single member of the House virtually giving a standing ovation to the true president of Venezuela, who carries the hopes and dreams of the Venezuelan people with him. Juan Guaido, there's Vice President Pence and Speaker Pelosi on their feet for the true president of Venezuela. Juan Guaido, both Republicans and Democrats standing and cheering him. So there's been a long-term mission of the United States government. It's just that we had other wars we had to go fight first, so we didn't really get around to Venezuela. Now we have time. The war in Gaza's over. Sort of, maybe. Probably not, but for a while at least. So we have this interval where we don't want to get bored. We want to make sure we have a new war to entertain us, to keep the weapons flowing. Here is Marco Rubio. This is when he was a member of the Senate in 2019. And he went to Twitter in Spanish, which I don't know if he would be allowed under the rules of MAGA to speak in Spanish now. But back then, anyway, he had no concern about proving that he was from that region, that was a region of personal concern to him. And he wrote, "We support the group of military personnel who rebel against Maduro and subordinate themselves to Juan Guaido." So he was saying that's who we support, is the part of the military who accepts Juan Guaido as their president. Here is Rubio in 2019. He has a picture there of just reminding people of exactly the historical precedent, which is Panama. He has a picture there of Manuel Noriega free, being defiant, and then a picture of him in Miami, where the U.S. military was sent to get him. Marco Rubio is very, very interested in Latin America, where he's from. And here we have Marco Rubio as well, threatening regime change. There's Muammar Gaddafi free, and then there's Muammar Gaddafi being raped to death as a result of U.S. intervention, something that Marco Rubio considers something to celebrate. These are the people who are in charge of foreign policy. They're pure neocons. Marco Rubio, I know we're supposed to believe he's reformed or he's under Trump's thumb and he's more anti-interventionist or whatever. I mean, I don't know what else I can show you. Here is NBC News in 2022. And this is John Bolton talking about his time in the White House. He's probably going to be indicted and arrested within the next few days, John Bolton is. But here is based on accusations that he leaked classified information. But here's NBC News. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton admits to planning foreign coups. Pressed about his involvement, Bolton cited an unsuccessful attempt to oust Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro during the first Trump administration. So there was an effort, as I indicated before, and when it failed, that was what led to Bolton's ouster. Politico this week has a report on how Trump has a different plan to oust Maduro this time around. Quote, the first time President Trump tried to push Maduro out of power, he wasn't coy about it. He accused the Venezuelan dictator of stealing an election, stripped U.S. recognition from Maduro's government, imposed sanctions on Caracas, and rallied other countries to pressure Maduro to quit. Didn't work. In his second term, Trump is targeting Maduro differently. He has said, quote, we're not talking about regime change in Caracas. Instead, he's emphasizing the long-standing accusation that the strongman is a drug lord and a dangerous criminal. The plan, people familiar with the situation say, is to force Maduro out as part of Trump's ongoing fight against drug cartels. The campaign may not formally be about regime change, but if the pressure from the anti-cartel moves happen to topple Maduro, well, the president and his team would be delighted. Quote, would everyone like Maduro to go? Yes, a Trump administration official said. We're going to put a lot of pressure on him. He's weak. It's quite possible he'll fall from this pressure alone without having to do anything more directly. Here's Marco Rubio on Fox. This was just this week, in case you have any doubt about what their real intentions are and who is behind it. I just think it's so bizarre. You have a movement calling itself America First, and then you have in charge of foreign policy, Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, somebody whose family came from Cuba and who has spent his whole life focused on the place that he comes from. He wants the United States to go reform and fix the countries that are in the region that his family comes from. Here's Rubio.
The United States has long, for many, many years, established intelligence that allow us to interdict and stop drug boats. And we did that. And it doesn't work. Interdiction doesn't work because these drug cartels, what they do is they know they're going to lose, 2% of their cargo. They bake it into their economics. What will stop them is when you blow them up, when you get rid of them. The President of the United States is going to wage war on narco-terrorist organizations. This one was operating in international waters, headed towards the United States to flood our country with poison. And under President Trump, those days are over.
And it wasn't a one-off. Rubio says strikes like these will happen again.
Now, the justification, as I said, is that this is a drug gang and therefore he's a narco-terrorist. And that's why these war on terror authorities are being utilized in order to justify this. But I just want to point to one thing. We've shown you before the reports about where drugs are coming from. And only a small portion originate from Venezuela, if at all. But this was all being discussed, as we showed you in 2019, 2020, when the Trump administration wanted to do it. There was a person who was leading the way in warning about the dangers of regime change in Venezuela. She was vehemently opposed. Her name is Tulsi Gabbard. She's now the Trump administration's director of national intelligence. And in May of 2019, she went to Twitter and she posted this, quote, throughout history, every time the U.S. topples a foreign country's dictator or government, the outcome has been disastrous. Civil war, military intervention in Venezuela will wreak death and destruction to Venezuelan people and increase tensions that threaten our national security. She then went on Fox News to expand on her argument, and here's part of what she said.
Here now exclusively, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, a combat veteran and 2020 Democratic presidential candidate. What's your reaction to that? You heard Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president there.
What we are hearing is an increased saber-rattling intention saying the United States needs to send in the U.S. military now to wage yet another wasteful, counterproductive regime change war. And once again, it's being done under the guise of humanitarianism. When we look throughout history, every time the United States goes into another country and topples a dictator or topples a government, the outcome has been disastrous for the people in these countries. That's why we should use our leadership in the world to try to broker a diplomatic solution, working with countries like Russia that have great influence over Venezuela, so that there is a peaceful outcome. Because I can tell you as a soldier, Martha, I've seen firsthand the high cost of war, and pushing for this civil war, pushing for the use of military force will only end up with more suffering and death and disaster for the Venezuelan people. What to speak of increasing these tensions that threaten our own national security. Anytime we're in this situation where you have tensions being ratcheted up and this conflict being pushed closer and closer between nuclear armed countries like the United States and countries like Russia and China, this is something that poses an existential threat to the American people.
I mean, all of those arguments still apply with equal force. And obviously, Tulsi Gabbard received a lot of support and applause for making those kind of arguments, not just with respect to Venezuela, but to all sorts of countries for a very long time. And yet, for whatever reason, every time there's a new war, a new regime change war that's on the table and that's packaged, people are ready to cheer for it. It's sort of like people say, yeah, I'm really sick of these regime change war operations. I'm sick of endless war. We need to stop meddling in these other countries. We need to stop fighting all these wars, and we need to spend our money instead on improving our communities here at home. And then every time there's a new war, someone says, oh no, but not this one. This one's like the real one. No, we have, of course, have to go fight in Ukraine. No, of course, we have to support Israel, our close ally. No, of course, we have to get rid of Maduro. This is a really bad guy. He's like a drug trafficker, kingpin, or whatever. People support the abstract principle vehemently, but then every time there's a new propaganda package handed, the government and their media allies know exactly how to package it to get just enough people to support it. One of the ways that it happens, I think is such an important thing to realize, because you're going to see this all the time now, you're already seeing it, is that in pretty much every country in the world, you can find people in the country who would want the United States to come and invade their country and change their regime. Why wouldn't they? The United States is an extremely powerful country. If you don't like the government and you can't get rid of it, and the United States wants to come and change the government that you dislike, yeah, of course, you're going to be in favor of it. You can find people in countries, not just in those countries, but people who are from the countries who left, or exiles or dissidents or whatever especially. You can always find people who are going to cheer U.S. support who are going to cheer U.S. intervention. In the build-up to the Iraq War, I remember they had all these Iraqi exiles. And if you would say, hey, I don't think the U.S. should go and invade Iraq and overthrow Saddam, they would come and they would say, how dare you? You have no idea how evil this dictator is. How can you be pro-Saddam? And they would try and shame you, like, oh, we're from Iraq, and we're telling you this is a terrible guy who deserves to be deposed, which, okay, maybe he does. But Americans still have the right to say, I don't want my government going around the world invading other countries and changing the regime. And then they just unleash these people who are from that country, who are from the region, who come and say, who are you to oppose the freedom for the Iraqi people? What are you, pro-Saddam? That's disgusting. And same thing now with the people who want regime change in Iran. You say you don't want the United States or any other country destabilizing Iran, changing the regime. There are all these Iranian exiles who will get unleashed on you saying, I'm from Iran. You have no idea the evils of the mullah. We want the Shah back. You're pro-mullah. You want to keep the Iranian people suppressed. Same thing in Syria. You had all these Syrians saying, how dare you oppose the dirty war that Obama unleashed the CIA to fight to get rid of Assad. Assad is a uniquely evil person. You're pro-Assad. We want to free the Syrian people. How dare you stand in the way? Obviously, same in Libya. And now you have tons of people who are from the region, like the Marco Rubios of the world, who are living in Florida, who came to the United States, or whose parents are immigrants from Venezuela or Cuba. And the minute anyone stands up and questions, why are we changing the government of Venezuela? Why is that our role? Why should the American worker continuously have to spend all of American resources to change governments from countries that don't have anything to do with us? You're going to see tons of people from the region, Latin Americans, Venezuelans, come try and shame you. What are you, pro-Maduro? I'll just give you one example. So earlier today, I started, trying to make the argument that, well, especially once this New York Times story came out, and I tried to say, the argument, quote, we have to go to war to change the regime in Venezuela because Maduro has weapons of mass destruction is actually a more convincing one than saying we have to go to war to change the regime in Venezuela because that's where the drugs are coming from that are drowning American communities. Because, as I said, the evidence is overwhelming that drugs don't come from Venezuela. That's every U.S. government report. And so I'm an American citizen. I'm saying I don't think we should be spending our money to go and change the government of Venezuela. I'm questioning the pretext for it, which I have every right to do. And then someone named Emmanuel Risson, who's with a bunch of groups associated with Venezuela and regime change in Latin America, needless to say, it's like the Ahmad Chalabi Iraqi exile or the Iranian exiles who want the Shah back, comes and says, let's just let the narco-terrorist Maduro, who stole Venezuela's elections, killing thousands of Americans every year and sending criminals and terrorists to the U.S., right, Glenn? And then here's somebody named Orlando Avendano, same exact origin, same exact thing, same exact orientation, cares about Latin America, wants the U.S. to go. So, Glenn, are you really going to now side with the narco-terrorist? Maduro isn't just a dictator. He runs the largest drug trafficking cartel in the Western Hemisphere and is a major source of regional destabilization throughout terrorist activity. His cartel moves more than 20% of the world's cocaine and is responsible for the death of thousands of Americans every year. He has also enabled the spread of organized crime groups like Tren de Agua, which murders dissidents and civilians beyond Venezuela's border. The U.S. feels it firsthand, but so do countries like Chile and Colombia. On top of that, Maduro has allowed Islamic terrorist groups to plan attacks from inside Venezuela and to move freely across the hemisphere. All of that is happening just a few hundred miles. Why not just say that he has weapons of mass destruction? Honestly, I feel like it would just be shorter, it'd be easier. We have already that framework in our head. Somehow we've managed to survive as a country, I really don't know how, for all these decades with having Hugo Chavez and the Nicolas Maduro in power in Venezuela. Somehow we've managed to survive with having the Castros and the communist government run Cuba. Who knows how we survived as a country allowing that? So now you're going to hear every single carousel of evil, every single major economic and social problem in the United States blamed on Nicolas Maduro as though that's the source of American problem. And if you're somebody who is concerned about the consequences of it, of constantly being on a posture of endless war, consuming more resources to go do war in Venezuela to change the government, who knows what kind of instability that will engender in the region. We never know the outcome. As Tulsi Gabbard said, every time we go and change the regime in another country, we produce disaster, not just for ourselves, but for the people of that country and that region. Anyone raising those questions, you're now going to be pro-Maduro. You're going to be in favor of a drug trafficker, in favor of a narco-terrorist. It's the same tactics every time. Don't fall for them. And don't be intimidated by these accusations. They really don't have any force anymore, or they shouldn't. They're worn out. These are neocon tactics. And I'm sure Trump is relying on Marco Rubio. It doesn't make Trump exonerated from blame. I'm just saying that I'm sure the prime driver behind this is Marco Rubio. And the reason is because he comes from that region. He represents a lot of people who want those governments changed, not because it benefits the United States, but because it benefits those countries that they continue to maintain a great deal of interest in and loyalty to, because that's where they come from. All right, let me ask you something. How much time do you spend every day on a web browser clicking around, searching, scrolling through endless tabs? It's a lot, right? Well, there's a new AI-powered browser from Perplexity called Comet, and it completely changes how you interact with the web. Using Comet feels like having a personal assistant living inside your browser, one that can actually do things for you. Not just give you answers, but literally click, type, scroll, and search like you would, getting tasks done in the background while you focus on other things. I tried it out before we agreed to partner with them, and here's what really amazed me. I think I mentioned this before, but I had Comet find a restaurant that fit my schedule and book the reservation for me, even send a calendar invite to remind me, all while I kept working on doing things like preparing the show with my colleagues and the like. All I had to do was mention a few things like what kind of food I wanted, how far I was willing to drive, and it figured out the rest in the background. It can also shop for you, summarize articles, book travel, or even bulk unsubscribe you from spam. All you have to do is download Perplexity's new AI web browser, Comet, today by heading to pplx.ai/Glenn. And when you download, you'll get a free month of Rumble Premium. That's pplx.ai/Glenn. Take back your time online with Comet. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.